Thank you so much. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I know this is almost coming towards the end of the day, but believe me, this is going to be a very insightful session today. So talking about zero to launch, how do we build the future in record time? Easier said than done. I just want to reflect on the comments that Atul made. I mean, is there hope? Are we doing enough in the space of innovation at speed and scale? To me, one of the stellar examples that we can touch, feel, and experience every day is UPI. If anybody disagrees, let me know. Today, as we speak, 500 million users on, the platform, and we also see that about $25 trillion of transactions were executed using the platform in August. I mean, this has been a tremendous success story. But having said that, it's not just about speed, it's not just about scale. What we are uncovering is technology is changing so fast. Ideas are becoming obsolete even before they are being prototyped. So in this scenario, it's not just about speed, but it's also about safeguarding trust. It's about safeguarding quality, and it's about safeguarding resilience and compliance. So how do we achieve all of these? Today, these two leaders will take us through, some of these very, very complex scenarios and challenges, how they have navigated these in each of their own industries. So let me start off by asking a question, to both of you, Dhruba and Krishna. So in your experience and in the industries that you cater to, what has been the single biggest barrier to innovation? If you can start, Dhruba, and then Shenoy, if you can chip in.
I come from the mobility industry, starting with automotive and broadening up into mobility. I think the biggest barrier, which is true for most new things or new trends, is the mindset itself. So the mindset of how we look at product development, how we look at what the market needs, that's where the speed comes, right? If the automotive industry keeps thinking that I can do new products only every 6 years, every 5 years, we'll keep doing it. But we are also seeing today that multiple geographies are able to bring out products in 2 years, some in 1 year. Delta releases in every 6 months. So it starts with the mind, because with that the organizations structure their way of work, and as a result your speed, your everything else flows from there. So I think in short, mindset is the biggest one.
Yep, sure. Shenoy?
Yeah, good afternoon, Geeta and Dhruba and everyone here. I think according to me, probably the biggest barrier is first, there's a lack of probably alignment to the objective and vision of why you are doing any innovation, right? Why you are trying to do a product, or why you're doing, if it's an internal enterprise, why you're doing this. I think the second most barrier, I believe, is there's a lack of alignment if there are multiple teams involved, right? You cannot do this in a silo. In a multifunctional probably teams, everybody should be aligned to the same objective. I think this is another barrier or failure of innovation what we have seen. And the third one probably is use of the technology, right? You're not using the technology, and sometimes you are too much wedded to a particular technology, or not you're not trying to get away from there, right? So I think these are the three important aspects I believe are the barriers when I look at it, right? Of course, like what Dhruba said, organization mindset and organization change.
Well said. I totally agree with you. And, talking about alignment, sometimes I think it's also important to recognize, talking about the work, you do with stakeholders across multiple sectors, it's not just about internal alignment within the organization, but it's also about alignment with the external stakeholders. Take for example, I think, Dhruba, your company, KPIT, it's working with, OEMs and, tier one suppliers worldwide. And therefore, there is a need for everyone to have a set of shared goals and, come together on the same page, so that everyone is driven by the same purpose and works together like an orchestra. How do you, go about doing that?
This is really a fundamental theme in today's world. not for only the industry that I'm talking about, but broadly, where it's about a complete ecosystem. You mentioned about we as a company working with vehicle makers, whether it's a passenger car, commercial vehicle, or any of those, or the tier ones. But I think the ecosystem is much broader than that now. So the speed and the success of speed, because just speed is not enough. You have to speed with success. That depends on the complete ecosystem. So we and many others, of course, we call it as from chip to cloud. So there has to be an ecosystem where at each layer, the real experts play their role. And then there is an alignment of the overall goal. So if it's a car that you are looking at, or if it's a new technology that needs to come into the car, or anything in the mobility world on the digital side, that alignment, I think Shenoy also mentioned about the objective. There has to be that bigger goal of, as a consolidated team, where do we go? But there also needs to be clarity of roles and responsibility of each of the players of the ecosystem. So that makes it a more sustainable and fast-moving ecosystem. And last but not the least, it's very important that there is alignment of strategies of each of these members of the ecosystem to the end client. So that strategy alignment is very important, because then we can align our investments both ways and it flows from there.
Sure. Completely agree with you on that. And I actually want to slightly pivot it to another point. So I think Shenoy, Infosys is a leader in connected engineering, digital twins, IoT, and the like. And you work with stakeholders across different sectors. And the digital maturity in different industries is at a completely different level. For example, I'm just saying, because I've worked in the engineering professional services space, engineering construction specifically, few years back, McKinsey rated it as the second least digitalized, just above hunting and agriculture. Now that was maybe 5-6 years back. It's a lot better now. But compared to automotive industry, engineering, pure play engineering or construction sector may not be that mature. But Infosys caters to a variety of industries. So with that kind of a scenario or a challenge before you, how do you go about bringing all your stakeholders across multiple sectors on the same page? What approach do you take? And how does your plan eventually succeed?
Sure, Geeta, thank you. I think that's a very important question for many of the industries, if you look at it. How do I do innovation? Because I've already invested so much of money, right? So do I do every time something new? Do I every time start spending new on any transformation and so on and so forth? I'll give you example of industrial sector itself. When Industry 4.0 happened, right? You know that manufacturing sector has so much of investments, infrastructure, machines. It's not that like a Android software, you can overnight turn it on, right? So one of the things what we looked at is how can you do more from your existing infrastructure and investments, right? So for that, we had defined a three-pronged strategy, right? For example, foundational, transformational, and strategic. Because you have to have investments, return on investments done, right? For example, in manufacturing, for example, if we do a smart manufacturing or transformation, that should lead to some amount of, let's say, productivity improvement, quality improvements, and so on and so forth, so that that cost savings can then be plowed back to your further innovation, right? So that's how we look at, I'm giving industry of manufacturing as an example. Similarly, all other industries, whether it's oil and gas or pharma and so on and so forth, we look at each industry from a different perspective. When obviously it's not like one size fits all. So it's more about each industry, what is the transformation, what is their priorities, and finally it's about even an individual customer, what is the investments they have made and so on and so forth. Right? That's how we look at it.
Sure, and I think that the journey is never the same from one sector to another sector and one company to another. So yeah, absolutely, agree with that. You talked about culture and mindset, Dhruba, earlier, and so this is often touted as a biggest showstopper, right? When an organization embarks on a change, not necessarily technological change, but any kind of change. So change management also becomes key and critical. And how do you actually build a culture that fosters innovation? Different organizations do different things, but what do you do in KPIT that makes it so special? I mean, you are literally, the front runners in CES and those kind of events. So what do you do differently that makes it click?
First of all, thanks for mentioning it that way. Uh, I think if you talk of innovation, innovation is to be, it's a culture. So the whole company, every member of the company needs to live that life, but it needs to start from the top. So, just like any branding, any culture, it starts from the top. So, over the years, when we have looked at new technologies, and with new technology comes that whole angle of innovation, we have always brought it up through the leadership team. Starts with the CEO, the top management, and the first top 100 people in the team. It's like extensive. You have to live through it. And then you have to demonstrate that these characteristics represent you doing things faster, you learning from your mistakes faster, and then building it back into the system, right? And then you percolate the learnings into more packaged, sometimes trainings, sometimes culture packages down the organization. What we also do is we have a mechanism of, and I'm sure most organizations around the room has, is something called as a long-range planning, because you can't completely lose sight of the longer term, which in today's way is 2 to 3 years is longer term. But also in a given year, look at your technology roadmap 2 to 3 times. So we no longer plan our investment for the year. We look at it for the year, but then we approve every quarter. So it's the same principle of fail fast. So are we going in the right direction? Did our clients change something in terms of their strategy? And we quickly change. So that's broadly.
Sure. And moving on to you, Shenoy. Earlier Atul touched upon this industry academia collaboration, and we also really wanted to talk about it, in today's session, because increasingly organizations are not going to be able to succeed in, bringing products to life soon, at quality, at speed, at scale, and with a great degree of trust, unless they collaborate with a broader ecosystem, and that includes academia, research partners. So in your example, how have you leveraged, the academia side of things to help you with, R&D or prototyping, whatever it may be. So I would like you to share some example, from your industry.
Sure. Before I go into the academia, the way we at Infosys look at is, and one of the key things today in the changing landscape, if you see, it's not about one company can do everything. It's about co-creation, co-innovation, whether it's academia or we also do with tech partners and so on and so forth, right? Just to extend that, today if you see in India, we have engaged with few IITs. We also have an innovation fund. For example, I think last year we invested around $2 million in a space tech, which was an incubation out of IIT Madras. We also have to engage academia and then make them also industry relevant. Infosys Springboard is an initiative. Today, almost like 4.2 million people have registered on this. And through the Springboard, we also engage both the educators and the students to make them either more collaborative or also make them industry worthy, right? So this is, and I'm not talking about all the other academic partnerships we have outside India.
Sure, sure. No, that helps. I want to ask another question to both of you. So earlier on, Atul talked about patient capital, and I actually wanted to talk about, the oft-repeated word ROI, and especially when it comes to new technologies, and especially in, I would say, kind of more traditional economy, old economy, companies or industries. There's always an increased focus mostly on productivity and how soon can I see my ROI. So there's always that need to balance, the need for showing results, showing measurable ROI in the slightly shorter term versus, whilst you're also implementing a longer term strategy that is intended to be more transformative. So how do you go about achieving that? I mean, quickly, if both of you can take that question. Dhruba, first you.
Yeah. Like I mentioned a few minutes back, it's always a combined view of long term and short term. Short term is as you mentioned, ROI. But I think ROI, the way we look at it has a multifaceted view. It's not necessarily always the financial or no immediate angle of it, but there is also an element of how it allows you to, for example, no, let's take for example AI. Everybody is involved in AI. So AI is probably an area where the ROI, contrary to so much that is in the media, is not really only short term. There will be some short term gains, but I think it's long term. A lot of things will work, but a lot of things will not work. Actually, many things, more things will not work, and we'll have to, kind of work through it and make it succeed. The accuracies, the efficiencies, all of that will evolve. So the ROI also has to be seen in that manner, and I think it's also a question of how leadership in different organizations looked at long term versus short term, and impact on the country also. It's not necessarily only the organization. I think I think a lot of us are part